Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the desk. Mars One in the middle, Nymera in the center. Melvin is on the opposite side. So, hello, sir, all the way down there. Hello. No? Oh, okay. I get a
I
wave
got the
back.
direction right. Yeah. I was
There
just
we go.
checking.
All right. I respect it. I respect it, gentlemen. Welcome back. But before we can go any further, I must announce we have a new record here for the LJL in 2021 split. We now have experienced, in that second game, the longest game of the LJL so far. Well done.
Does
Woo!
that overtake
Yay.
Sengoku Burning Core?
It does actually by 3 minutes. 48 minutes for, no, 45 minutes for that game, 48 minutes and 1 second for this game, Nymera. Though it didn't cause you any less dread, I think would be a very fair assessment.
Okay, this was a higher level match than that game, but it doesn't mean that there aren't points of criticism. I'm sure Temporal and Midnight talked through that as much as you needed to hear it on the cast to a certain extent. We had problems with itemization, had problems with how the compositions were pushing up on the map, particularly from the Hawks pushing up a little too far without the right vision, got collapsed on in the one way that they could not afford to do. But credit to V3, they saw the opportunity, they saw the gaps in the vision line, and they pounced.
We will be going highly in depth into some of these later fights, but I want to come over to you first, Melvin Izzle. I mean, we're talking about those itemization that Mera was already going on. We've got Edge of Night and Banshees, full lethal
Yeah.
Temple Varus. We got full AP Galio. What's going on with these itemizations?
The biggest problem we ended up having with the spell shields of the Banshees and the Edge of Night was the fact that there was a proto belt on the enemy team. There were so many tools, just the Ezreal Qs, that immediately could just turn off the spell shield. And it was just like, okay, well, effectively you've done nothing by having this. We would have much preferred things like the QSS, the Zonyas, even things like this, at least for Dasher, because we just saw so many of those fights played out where it was point and click stun into the entire team kills them. And it's like, okay, well, what did the Banshees do for you? Nothing.
It really did feel like it did absolutely nothing. I want to bring it over to this Varus because we had our thoughts on it, and Nymera, it ended up being a poke Varus. We feel
Yep.
like it might have been better if it was an on-hit Varus.
Yeah, so no lethal tempo, none of this on hit dealing with low range compositions. This game was entirely about, okay, everyone is going to be slugging themselves within about 300 units of each other. Who can actually output the most damage, and who's going to be the carries that really survive towards the end of it? And what we saw is that Ezreal was uncontested in consistent DPS because Orianna couldn't outrange the Ezreal. And for a while I thought, okay, Ezreal in the mid game isn't going to be able to do enough, but as we saw, it wasn't really decided in the mid game. It got to late game with a full item Ezreal, and Varus couldn't stand and shoot, couldn't turn around significant damage onto the front line and get them out of the picture early enough into that fight, nor do they have something like a shield bow, which may very well have helped them to do so. I felt like the Hawks kind of gave up what could have been a massively winning composition in terms of the amount of damage they could output, and hollow credit to them, really stepped up on that front.
I think my microphone is also going to be better as well. I mean, that Varus just never really quite worked out for them in any circumstance, and I think you put a really good point on that. I want to just bring it over though to Melvin Izzle for the opposite side on good itemization, and Ace went full AP Galio because he could
Well,
build a death cap.
one of the things that both of these comps had as a main issue is after one item, outside of the ADCs and a little bit of Dasher, there's just so many meatballs in the game on both squads that it's like, okay, your damage is just effectively mitigated for the front line. It's just whoever kills the enemy carries wins because everybody else just gets in a slap fight for the rest of it. Once they were so far ahead for V3, though, Ace became a genuine damage threat, which meant that the bruisers of this Xin Zhao and the Aatrox that the Hawks had could not just go for the full armor, and they were really punished for not being able to stack the magic resist because Ace was so accelerated after that early 30 minutes, let's say.
Yeah, I mean, I think you raised that into a great point because this was a game that honestly probably shouldn't have gotten as long as it had. This was a game where both sides honestly had an opportunity to kind of overthrow, and Nymera crossed fingers that audio is going to work this time,
Yes.
sir. We've got 2 replays, and I'm going to take it over to you, sir, to run us through, honestly, some of the most defining team fights of this whole game.
Okay, so we had a plethora of choices to go towards, and I've decided to go towards 2 of the latest game fights we could get. The first one is going to be, of course, this Elder Dragon fight. How are we starting things off? Cog dashing out of things, trying to set up for, of course, Galio, who is all the way down here if you look on the minimap, because they can get right into the backline. And suddenly, if you get on top of the Varus, that's a big issue. We can see currently Varus ult misses. That's one way to keep that front line at arm's length. That's tool number 1 removed from the Hawks to try and fight this around. So then we have to see, okay, right, trying to keep your carry safe is going to be a bit of a difficult thing to do. What can they do to still try and keep themselves safe while getting on top of Ezreal? And we see some real magic happen in this fight. Cog zoned off, and we see that because V3 are split across everything, they don't necessarily have themselves the easiest way into the fight. Now, I want you to keep an eye just on this ward here as well, because an interesting fact, if you are teleporting to a vision ward rather than control ward, you're actually not seen through Fog of War. But that doesn't really affect anything that's happening right here. This is an absolute cluster of damage right on top of the key targets. Zenit is zoned out, does manage to get something around, but this is poke. This isn't on hit. That is not half of these HP bars being taken down. That's actually just a little bit of damage onto Unica. Teleport comes in onto this thing that we prepared earlier, and Hollow says, oh, well, I can't see any of this. I'm going to start walking forward and doing some damage. Apperman is not in the back of things, but that doesn't matter because Dasher comes in unseen. Apperman gets a knock-up onto this Ezreal too right here. He can't E out at that point, which means the shockwave is pulled through. And it's exactly what Melvin Isle was saying. You kill the carries, suddenly you end up being in a much better place. Zenit does go down, but actually, as soon as the carry's down, probably this guy, the big old God of War, is the person who's going to be watched for damage after that point. Of course, Dasher is out of that fight because he's over the wall, and that's how that fight comes out. That's the good news for the Hawks. That's what happens when you do shut down Hollow. Going to go over to like the other side of the coin, which is, okay, well, what happens if you don't shut down Hollow? What happens if, this other guy, which is really scary, this guy doesn't have ultimate, doesn't have summoners either? That is a very different story to what happens in that first replay. Hawks have already found a pick onto the Leona at some point, and this time they're trying to pick off the jungler too because the Baron is now out of the fray. Ace gets into the backline. Ace has already taken down 1 target, and also, I mean, look where the attention turns. Hollow, look at the distance here. Backline to backline distance is so huge. There is no way in hell that these 2 carries here have any threat onto them. Sure, maybe you get rid of Ace. Maybe that's your target at that point. But as we said, that is just not important enough at this point. Particularly now that Apperman is not in a position to really shut down the Ezreal. And yes, they do get their ultimate partway through this fight. It's not the same as diving in at the very start of it and keeping things going. Hollow even gets to E aggressively forward at this point. And again, Zenit and Dasher do not have the range to be playing backline to backline. At least if you have a crit Varus, you can play backline into frontline and take down the tanks. That is not what happens in this game, and in this fight rather. And then we see here is literally just the 2 carries left alone. They even get tagged. They get their recalls stopped at this point, and they don't get to defend effectively. V3 end the game off of this push.
Thank you very much, Nightmare, for that insight into some of the most defining moments. Obviously, that Elder Drake, when Dasher was able to get it, Apperman with that knock-up. If you missed it, it could be over. And what
Arcane
happened
shift
to Hollow?
out, and they're safe.
Right, and that fight is completely different afterwards. Melvin, I want to bring over to you. Is there anything else that what Nightmare kind of set up that you want to kind of take away?
I think it has to just all be on Hollow. There was a point in the game where they were level 18 over to Zenit's level 14. And because of how long that game was, you could even see by the end of it, Zenit was contesting about to hit 18, but just how far ahead and how focused the resources of V3 were was the main thing. That, again, it's a clear win condition for them. It's the same thing we said after the first one. In the first game, it was wombo combo, do that over and over. In this game, it's protect Ezreal, make sure that Dasher can't one-shot him, Zenit can't really threaten onto this champion. So they did that this game. Every single fight, all the eyes were on Dasher, and it just meant that V3 were able to walk away with this game in a slogfest, but one that did go in their favor.
For VOD reasons, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to go ahead to a very short break. But when we come back, we'll be coming back with a very short analyst desk just to get you prepped up for game number 3 between V3 Esports and the Fukuoka Softbank Hawks Gaming. It's only going to be for a minute, so don't go anywhere, ladies and gentlemen. Hello everybody. Welcome back to the desk. Mass one, Nightmare in the middle, Melvin is on the opposite side. Hello, sir, as always. Gentlemen, game number 3 is upon us, but it's a very important time because this was a spot that we didn't expect to find the Fukuoka Softbank Hawks in. There being an 0-2 deficit down. They were our favorites, and we even predicted the 3-0. I'm going to come over to you first, Melvin Izzle. What can the Hawks do right? Where did we get in? Is it all okay, or is the house truly on fire?
Definitely on fire, but they do have a fire extinguisher with them. They've just decided not to use it as of current. In both of the games that we've seen, there have been plenty of points where you could look at it and go, okay, Hawks can win from this point. Okay, the angle is there, but it's just a lack of playing to what they need to, for at very least in that second game. But the first one for me was just looking at and going, you just misplayed in a lot of spots that you aren't allowed to do because the enemy comp is just more coherent than yours.
I want to bring it over to you, Nightmare, in a slightly opposite way. Are we going to see V3 get the 3-0? Are they just skirmishing? Are they team fighting better? Is this actually V3's to throw away now?
There is something to be said about skirmishing and team fighting better. Yes, absolutely. We can see that in the footage. It's quite obvious that V3 are just winning more often than not in that sense. But for me, it's more about the understanding of the composition. And what Melvin Izzle was talking about, coherency of the composition, absolutely true. There's something there going, well, what the heck are you doing with a Poke Varus in this second game or something like that? And in the first game, I'm sure there are similar concerns if we went back and looking at that draft. But there is something to saying about, Hawks, do you know what you need to do to win? You know, where is your win condition? What are you playing through? And have you set that up effectively? Second game, we saw 2 or 3 times getting massive flanks onto V3 managed to get massive flanks, particularly Cog, onto this grouped up team and get into those backline carries, which should have been safe in the mid game. That wasn't the case. The Hawks didn't end up playing towards that and setting up their carries for success. And that's a big worry for me. Are V3 going to get the 3-0 based on how they're playing? And if nothing changes between the 2 games, absolutely, yeah.
I messed up my prediction. All right, good to know. Good to know. I want to just give a quick call out over to our admin Ochimo. He made a point when we were just sitting with him watching this game. He mentioned vision, and that the fact is that V3 had incredible vision control,
which allowed them to do the flanks.
Absolutely. And then something I want to go on to the opposite side. Melvin Izzle, you're well aware that myself, Nightmare, and Initialize have been criticizing the Hawks in the spring split about their vision control. This series, I think, is kind of raising its awkward, ugly head again. Hawks' vision just isn't there.
Just aren't clearing out the flanking wards. That Renekton one in the previous game that really flipped the game on its head and allowed V3 to, I believe that was just before a Baron. There were a lot of objectives taken due to flanks last game.
3 Barons, by the way.
Yeah, there you go. So one of the Barons, the point being that there's just always an angle for V3 to outplay on the map. Even in that last game, when they had double inhibs open, you could see it that the Hawks were just in such a scared position because you can't leave the base, but you need to contest. There was even a point where they were chasing Cog, I believe it was Upperman, just running after him for a good 30 seconds because you can't leave him alone, or they could just end the game theoretically. So it's one of those where I think that this is just V3 feeling more comfortable on the map, which is mostly due to vision.
Yeah, they had so much control. I just want to quickly bring up, as casters are on the official stream, so I just want to quickly bring up the post-game breakdown from game number 2, just so we can kind of paint that picture that we don't want to be seeing if you're a Hawks fan. But if you're a V3 fan, you might be okay with it. There was hope when it came into this. 60k damage, though, like, for Hollow, that there's just so much to kind of just look at. I mean, it looked okay for the Hawks at one point at the 30-minute mark.
For sure, but like, don't be fooled by that Varus damage. That's not important damage, because that wasn't actually in the huge team fights actually killing someone. Again, it's kind of, you have very available damage, but the Ezreal was doing it in more important times in the game by my eyes. I guess what is quite impactful is the fact that Apperman, even after they were shoved down in the early game, managed to have a very dominant performance on the Aatrox, even in that loss, looked like a real threat. So I'm interested to see if the Hawks can kind of rally around that top laner too in some ways.
I think for me, the Dragons is the most important stat here. V3 have been very ahead of the game here, and that's where Hawks need to start approaching it better.
Well, we have been given the note that pick and ban phase has begun, so let's give it over to our casters and get into that pick and ban phase. Gentlemen, Midnight, Temporal, take it away.
Thank you very much, guys. Game number 3. I'm cuddling my comfort poros. This has been a trepidatious series for the Hawks fan in me, man. All 4 of them are up here. It's been pain, but the Hawks can still fight back. But we'll have to find out, because so far, they really have not shown it, as V3 have already powered through the pick and ban phase. The Ziggs is up there, and the Callista for Zenit. We haven't seen this in a while.
All right. I think both teams waking up and choosing violence in game 3. V3 look to outmaneuver Softbank Hawks completely and give them no way back in. The Hawks, when you're down at match point in a best of 3, you adapt once and you have to stick it for the rest of the series. With the Callista, it might be on Zenit and Corporal to find that 2v2, but into a flexible Ziggs, a Ziggs Rel as well. Quite difficult for the Callista here, but that's okay. There is still hope in the Hawks camp. V3 can open up a number of ways here. They've taken away 3 premier picks for Dasher and 1 that can be flexed down here for Zenit in the Syndra. And they will finish off their first round with a Volibear, so that's their bottom side consolidated. Yeah, just missing 2 solo lanes. Jungle completing that now. Will be Unica running back this Volibear. Very easy to play and something useful maybe for the substitute.
Yeah, I mean, it worked out fine in the last match when they were rocking the Volibear. Why not grab it again as the Hawks? Oh, no, please don't do this to me, Hawks. Please don't do this to me, Hawks. I have said, it has been discussed. Me and Nightmare have said many a time on stream, when you're locking in an Olaf, he is not a Build-A-Bear champion that you drop into a composition and say, you know what, that's good. You need an Enchanter support. Now, I'm going to go on a limb and say that the Leona isn't an Enchanter.
Okay. No, I think you pretty much got that one there. Can be a dive buddy though, and dive buddies versus Ziggs, a pretty popular way to try and attack the champion. With the Kench gone, another dive buddy in his new form with that Umbral. Is it Umbral Trespass? I think that's someone else, isn't it?
That is the Kane Ultimate.
That is Kane Ultimate.
I have spent way too long studying Ultimate names.
So someone's got to do it.
I mean,
with the way the flip flop frog dives on right now, being every 20 seconds instead of much longer, that is reasonable for the Kench. The Reddick to take it away.
Yeah, you don't want to give Zenit the chance to get more spears in. The Tom Kench extends the survivability of a Callista, and so just got to get rid of that nice and early. Speaking of getting rid of, Renekton, which we did see in the previous match in the hands of Cog, struggled in lane, but still made it work.
With Azir gone, I think this could be... Oh, yep, okay. Dive Buddy Supreme there for Apperman. Not what I was going for, but you know what? It takes the cake. That means the 5th pick here saved for Dasher in that middle lane. It's going to be all on him. He does have more serious setup around him this time. Ace hovering that Galio once again would maybe overextend their magic damage if they want too much of a threat here. I think the Orianna is bait. But they will
I'm
take
not
it
so
whole anyway.
Because now what worries me is what does Cog bring to the table that isn't AP based, right? Like, because you can't bring a Lily, well, not a Lilia, for example, but you don't really want to bring a tank. Obviously, the likes of the Nye is off the table. You need physical damage somewhere in your composition.
That'll do it.
Yeah, no, that'll definitely do it.
The Trundle resurging to popularity on the current patch. Just such a fantastic threat. When we've moved away from tanks to bruisers. We've moved away to things that build AD in small or large numbers, most notably here Camille, Olaf. On the other side, just examples of these characters that build that attack damage and look to be the threat around our big mages instead of any tanks. So Trundle succeeds here, and I think that might be a Volibear top lane, as that is also a pretty decent matchup. Into the Camille, it heals just about as much damage as she does. A true damage doesn't do a lot to a bear with a full health bar, no matter how much you've got of it. So it will be Trundle in the jungle, which is all fine, all good. It is the only CC that still interacts with Olaf's Ragnarok, building terrain around him. So V3 look like they've got what they wanted here, but Hawks have come out with something more coherent than the last game. Fingers crossed they can play to it, because they played for super early game advantage last time and they didn't do it. So
Yeah.
this time around, we'll instead look for something a bit more pointed throughout the game. We'll go for dive buddies and look to take out this Ziggs before it can be the threat. And all of that quite risky into an Orianna. So multiple conditions on the dive composition once again.
And if we remember the last time we saw the likes of the Hawks bringing that dive composition to the table, memory serves to game one, right? They had a very let's throw ourselves at the enemy kind of approach. And it wasn't that it didn't win, but they were fighting a full team fight composition. I'm sorry, but diving into the team fight, it's difficult to execute as was shown. This composition from V3, while it's good, is it the same level of Venn diagrams of death? Absolutely not.
No,
so
it's not direct anti-dive in the way an Aphelios composition is. However, it does have a very difficult approach. So approaching into the Ziggs, approaching into the Orianna, approaching into the Trundle. Very difficult. Trundle and Orianna both have that effect where your primary dive will have its follow-up delayed by the pillar, by the shockwave, by anything Ziggs puts up front, by Reiner's counter engage perhaps. And then linking that stun back into his own backline. That said, Hawks have got lots of tools here that Olaf can ignore a bunch of that. Can ignore the shockwave, it can ignore Ziggs as it runs forwards. Apperman can engage from quite some distance, and it's hard to chain on an explosive charge to get yourself away. If the ultimatum comes through, it is truly doomed. It will be a game of Hawks trying to get that dive at short range and all come together as quickly as possible. Playing through Dasher in this mid lane, no doubt, another huge Silas performance. We are due. And it's no one's game from minute one is how I'm going to describe this.
Yeah, I'm a bit nervous, but the bigger thing for me is from that minute one, Olaf, and I've said this on many times in the past, and I'm gonna have to say it again. Olaf is a champion from minute 1 till about maybe minute 10. Then he becomes a really weird looking super minion from 10 to about maybe we'll call it 18.
Yeah.
And then from 18 minutes to me, and this is being generous, 18 to about 2023 ballpark, he is a really weird looking regular minion with a Viking helmet. And then after that, he's a regular minion, right? He scales awfully. So if we don't see some damn aggro play out of him this game, I'm really, really worried. And what's worse is on top of that, I'm thinking back to last game with the Xin. Now, if memory serves, Tussle on the aggressive Xin didn't do a whole
find
lot.
his way. Yeah. I feel like the Olaf can have a place here nearly no matter what. 'Cause, like, will force something out of V3. Like, he will approach eventually. So we do see the experience given over to Zenith, so won't make a difference for a minion in this bottom wave, but could make a difference on level 2 and 3. I can't remember exactly how that one works out. That's something I'm going to have to go and relearn. In any case, the Olaf could be a reasonable threat here. We'll have to look for some early plays. Has chosen the magical boots. When you do that in the jungle, you've got to try and accelerate them out. Otherwise, you're just delaying your own pickup of 300 gold, which you can normally weave into a nice early back. And also, we'll have Dasher to play for. We've seen Silas versus Oriana. We know what the Hawks think about that one so far. Both bot lanes starting off nice and early. Notice that Tussle is starting on his chickens. This means he can get double scuttled and not fall behind an experience.
Here we go. Here's the aggro I want to be seeing. Hollow and Reyna take a bad level 1 trade because they had no idea that Zenith and Corporate were looking for it. But this is what you do on Callista, right? Your entire identity is win early game and win early game.
Win the 2v2 scale up and look for the resets in fights. That is the way we like to see it. Blitzcrank's on favoring the V3 here once again. I think that might be a certain Olaf performance in the regular season, skewing the data slightly. But then again, as you've highlighted, the champion doesn't really like to go to hyper late game, becomes a bit of a solved problem at various stages where the ability to ignore CC and run forward doesn't truly matter that much, especially when you've got multiple things to help the members of V3 speed up and speed away. Cog is doing some scouting right now. He's abandoned his top lane. Never mind, he's abandoned all of it. He can turn around just before he reaches mid. Thinks better of the immediate gank onto Silas. And meanwhile, in the bottom lane,
Zenith just gets caught and killed. First blood in the bottom lane. I feel like I've said that more than once today. As the Hawks lose it. And, God. This is not the early game that the Hawks needed out of the Callista in Zenith's hands.
For the uninitiated, Midnight is a Hawks fan to some degree. And this is going to hurt for him even more than it hurts for all of us watching this happen right now. Unica does one half of the jungle, 3 camp clear. It's not the one I would have chosen, but it doesn't matter because he's into this lane nice and early before the Hawks think he is going to arrive. This is probably the best way to play Trundle right now. Do 2 camps and 2 buffs in a camp, or in this case, just your top side, and get out onto the map before that 3-minute mark. Get in, and with that level 3, you are just the complete package. You have the pillar to upset your opponents. You get in nice and quick on the ground, and then with the AD steal, with the auto attack reset and the press the attack, you bring the damage in the small unit fights.
And taking a look at this, you're talking about the jungle pathing, and
Yeah.
here we can
So,
take a bit of a look at.
We've highlighted Trundles, we've highlighted Unicas, but for Tussle, this is a super defensive route. This one lets you not contest any Scuttle Crab if you're not happy, and keeps you up in experience and gold because your chickens come back first, way before your opponents, and around the time you would otherwise be contesting to a Scuttle Crab. You can just walk back there, your camps have already respawned, and you get more time. Even with that first blood coming through, big CS deficit in the bottom side for Hollow, and now a 2v2 in top.
Yeah, Cog running for the hills here. Apperman not able to get much there. The flash burn from Cog though will force the volley bear to recall, and it could be the first signs of life for what is a very difficult lane for the Camille.
It is indeed. I don't know where I got 2v2 from. I was just like, yeah, Tussle's definitely Edge of Fog. No, it's not quite there at that time.
Not there yet.
Not there yet. Tussle does farm a chunk faster than Unica until a couple of items have come through. Especially XP important for Trundle in the jungle. We're seeing a max Q here out of Unica. He's not like Zanza of Astralis fame, who maxes W and just smashes things with top attack speed. Instead, going for that spike damage, so to refer to, which is the auto Q auto, which does a little bit more in the short trade. And we'll look for that instead. But until you get a few points in Q, until you get a few points in EOW, a little bit slower through the jungle for Trundle. So not unusual to see Tussle with a CS lead. It is the 4 from that camp, and then 1 or 2 extra on top.
But, again, you're not really looking at the Olaf and thinking, crap, I need to match the Olaf in the early game, right? Because he
No,
folds.
yeah, don't do that.
Don't try and match the Olaf. Be better than the Olaf, which by extension, your Trundle, you're already doing that. And speaking of it, Dasher putting some pressure onto Ace. What a surprise. Although Ace does have some backup that immediately abandoned ship. And Apperman
Oh.
might be in trouble. A nice ultimatum, though. Kokog's locked in. Apperman not feeling it any much longer. Hookshot is 5 seconds away if Kokog wants to force it, but instead backs away. And the Hawks look like they're going to be the ones to take that first bite out of the Dragon Cake.
This is something Olaf or Lee Sin does very well, just forcing enough differentials in those lanes, enough pressure to get onto the first dragon and guarantee that one for himself. And with the Callista's extra objective control coming through, that one is a sure bet for the Hawks. You take those fights every day of the week. V3 going to crash the wave in and take the reset instead. Happy to get this Ziggs as close to Callista and Gold as possible. Unica is going to help Ace reset here. With this timing, they're helping look for a reset for the 8-minute Herald spawn. Unica's going to smite to get the blue smite enabled. And it always looks so funny when the Olaf has to walk the long way.
I just love how, like, we're seeing Unica, he's like, all right, I'm going to push this wave and it's going to be fun. And Tussel's like, hey, no. In fact, you're not going to get a clean reset here. And Ace has recalled, picked up the Oblivion Orb, which, you know, I love the item because Silas heals.
Oh, you have to buy it
Champion
first.
has any right
Against
to.
Silas as any control mage that can apply it relatively easily.
Anyway, it should be fine. And now, does the Hawks look at the Herald and say, well, we're in a position to contest? Hell, look at Tussle. He's hanging out. We could, in fact, get a full 2v2 in top lane. The two junglers will butt head. The two top laners will see what's going on. Apperman positions himself on the flank. Kolkog goes in for that trade. Hookshot does get Apper out of trouble, though, because obviously Kolkog took the better end of the trade. What a surprise. Volibear into Camille works out in the Volibear's favor, and the Hawks, not stronger than 2v2, are forced to disengage.
It kind of feels bad to even call it the better version of the trade. Cog ends up with more HP than he started, and Apperman very much not the same case. Just a little bit of Volibear prowess. Already had that big bite stacked up and was able to take a chunk out of Apperman. V3 pushing off the Hawks from this bottom lane. Oh, excuse me. Damaged sleep schedule from not being very well. It's like at midnight you can get away with yawning. It's very late for you.
Yeah, it's 10 in the after. It's 10 at night for me. I could totally get away with something like that.
Oh, I shouldn't, but oh well. Being healthy is for a future day. The Hawks have moved away their bot lane in a bit of a confusing fashion. I'm not sure if they were trying to set up some sort of play towards mid lane. They've lost a wave on this bottom side, and Reiner and Hollow should be trying their best to deny it. They pick up a plate for the pleasure.
Ooh.
As Dasher continues to put on a bit of a clinic. The shockwave will come through, but we saw this from Ace previously. Just enough to dissuade the all-in. Denied. That is what you want as Ziggs into Callista. This is why it isn't Callista's full kill lane, as it is maybe against some other mages. I'm thinking of Syndra specifically. Because you can... Wow, that was a lot of damage from Tussle. Because you can just blast Callista away, and she's quite slow. Even with the full boots, needs to be in combat to move across the map at speed. And,
can't be in combat if you get pushed away with a damn satchel charge.
This is true. And get knocked away from any minions, and you can't really return quite so easily.
And it's a bit frustrating. We're seeing Corporal. We know he likes to make plays, and he's just sort of stuck there in the bottom lane. Can't do a whole lot, as we saw some weird roams from them earlier. I think that was sort of pressuring around the Rift Herald. Obviously, the Hawks decided, hey, we'll do it again. Kolkog leaps over the wall, says, ah, crap, what are you guys doing here? I thought, no, but my jungler's meant to, you know what, never mind, I'm leaving, goodbye. He'll back away for now. Does get a little bit fresh, but Ace is coming by. Kolkog needs to be careful, he's by himself, jumps up in the air. Shockwave is not used just yet. It's not actually available, as Kolkog will fall victim. Corporal says, all right, let's fight time, let's do this, baby, as Zenit is rocking up to the fight a little bit late. Tussle gets taken down low, but Tussle doesn't give a damn because Olaf is an early game champion. This is his domain.
The stolen Volibear ultimate doing so much work here. Something we haven't spoken about that is commonly mentioned is what can Silas steal this game? Oriana's a pretty good ultimate steal, but most importantly, you've got Ziggs, Trundle, and Volibear, all that do incredible work when the ratio on them is pushed to the limit, which is something Silas's ultimate does for him for free. So the extra AP on the Volibear ultimate and the extra damage coming through on the subjugate for this Trundle will be significant as the game goes on. Let's watch that one back again. So Cogcog takes the delayed trade, trying to wait for the 4 members of V3 that are arriving to this fight to get here.
It's too early.
Unfortunately, it's more members of the Hawks and a teleport in a little too late from Hollow. The bomb goes wide. Tussle goes very, very low. Unica continuing to extend to try and get that reset. Just blown apart by multiple members of Hawks. They'll walk away with a herald for their trouble and some gold to boot.
One auto attack was all that was needed. You could have breathed on Tussle, and I think he probably would have had to go to the ER after that as well. But instead, Tussle gets out, has the Herald, and now gets Dragon number 2. And this is Olaf. This is quintessential Olaf. I love... Okay, I was critical of the Olaf in the composition at the start. Still am. But...
You can dislike the Olaf. I think that's a very fine stylistic choice, to be honest.
But the way that they're playing around it is brilliant. Because this is what you do on Olaf. If your team isn't in position to win, by the time you're a weird minion with a Viking helmet at about the mid-20-minute mark, you haven't done your job as Olaf. And Tussle, look, he is 2 dragons, one Rift Herald, which hasn't been dropped yet, which I would love to see dropped pre-14 minutes because, you know, turret plating gold is, I think, invaluable.
With the dragon gun as well. There isn't a lot else to use this for.
Exactly.
I'm not sure which side lane they want to break open. Corporal wants to engage down there, but as we can see, until that last Q came through, Reiner is on the same health they started with, and Corporal loses a chunk of theirs. So the piercing arrow back onto Hollow, the saving grace of that trade. But,
It's a typical
difficulty here for Hawks' bottom lane, translating that advantage forwards. As you'll notice, Hollow now with the CS lead after taking that fight a bit slower and teleporting up later. Tussle moving on into middle.
Oh, lovely connection. Double shockwave coming through, but Ace is going to get the worst end of the trade there as Tussle will just run him down. Meanwhile, topside though, Appa does dodge out the volley ultimate and simply says, all right, I want to go under my turret. I just leave me alone, please.
No flash for Cogcog, so the dive without the ultimate will be a little difficult. As the Rift Herald denied with the Pilly, Unica showing off some knowledge will delay a little longer. Might will get Shelly gone from the map. Another plate over to the Hawks. They do have a small gold lead growing now, nearly 2,000. And most of that in the mid lane as a result
Is this
of
just
that
Ace's
play.
execution? Oh man,
It's really rough to sort of play against the Silas on the wave as the Oriana. You see Ace dodging in and around those minions that are meant to deny the abscond. As soon as you are forced back off of it, beautiful swap there of symmetrical Oriana ultimates.
Yeah,
the Silas just gets to open up, and with the Tussle there to seal the deal, Oriana Silas is just not a lane I think many other LJL mid laners want to play right now.
Yeah, because by the time you realize that Dasher is going to commit to you and Tussle is there, it's too late. Like you saw, by the time Dasher committed to the dash forwards, Ace has already given some room, didn't dodge the skill shot, which is like, oh, you get hit by skill shots, it happens. And then Tussle appears out of the fog of war, you're like, crap.
Yeah.
Like,
when those caster minions are gone and you're not able to sort of hide behind them, which is how Oriana gets up on the wave in the first place, even with a dissonance forwards, it's really difficult for the Oriana to sort of withstand those trades. Is what Silas lives for, getting on top of the control mage and dealing a whole bunch of damage, healing back the little damage the control mage could do, removing any kill pressure. And he just keeps getting away with it, Midnight. He just keeps
typical
away.
Dasher, man. We know that his highest, again, 15 minutes. Guess who has 100% kill participation? And I'll give you a hint. It's the Hawks mid laner again. Oh, time and time again, man. Dasher. He's the principal of the Hawks early game live by the Dasher, and unfortunately in this best of 5 series, it seems to be die by the Dasher as well.
A little bit, especially in that last one. I don't think we're going to see the Hawks pick Orianna again, no matter how long this series goes. Hollow will TP back out, going to keep his advantage up. Has gone for the Leandries over the Ludens. So that means his wave clear slightly slower, but the damage much higher. The need for magic resist on Hawks much higher, as without that magic penetration, you can deal a little more mitigation with some magic resist. But
Ooh.
the burn damage and the stacking AP means if you don't build that magic resist, the Hollow's damage will be that much more significant.
And for V3, I look at V3 and my question, is that really the best choice for it though? Because Hawks are likely to already build magic resistance to boot, right? Like,
So it because of the way numbers work in Season 11 is Zenit will flash away there.
Oh no, Ace. Not again.
Oh,
Ace, not
damn.
again. He's just getting bullied by Dasher. I've seen this before. He flashes away. He does have backup, but Ace is just getting bullied out of this matchup. We saw this in the first game of the day.
We did.
Dasher, give him an inch. He takes a mile and then some.
It goes all that bit further. The Orianna still, this isn't her year, Midnight. There's only been 2 where she's been off in the history of League of Legends, to be honest. And this, unfortunately, is one of them. We were talking about the Leandries. With the way the burn works and the amount of AP you actually get over that bit of magic pen, with still some magic pen on your boots, it is worth it more often than not, even when your opponents are building some magic resist. But there is a significant difference if you're up against, say, a Tahm Kench. No matter your health burn, you won't break through the Spirit Visage.
Alright, so Hawks are doing the brilliant thing here. Again, you need to keep the game going. You need to keep the dragon stacking, but you need to use that Herald. So now V3 have committed to the objective here, but Hawks are going to be in. Solar Flare on multiple members. Corporal's got the opening, but Zenit does have Avmin on the side. Pulls him out, goes for the fight here. Dragon has been abandoned. V3 continue the fight, but Dasher coming in from the flank. V3 has yet to get anything down. The Dragon is secure. V3, they need to get out of there, but I think it's a little bit too late. Hawks are actually going to run them over. Hawks are in a great position. Shockwave has multiple members, though. That's the turnaround. V3 finds the opening. The Hawks group up, get smacked down by that Shockwave. Ace, the man being bullied for the past 18 minutes, says, boys, get ready to get clapped.
A huge ultimate in from Cog, and the Wombo combo comes to fruition. V3 give the Dragon, but take the fight. They'll equalize that gold advantage. And while the Hawks go to Soul Point at 18 minutes, so relatively swiftly, it's not all good in the Hawks camp right now. We'll watch this back. V3 play to this corner. They know that if they can force Hawks to group, chase them forwards, they'll win. That's why you see multiple members walk straight back in a line there. Zenit will pull away Corporal from going a little too far, but look, Zenit coming forwards here in the next moment does mean, as the Magnet Storm comes through, Hawks just align the Shockwave, beautifully called Cog trusting his mid laner and throwing early on the Stormbringer, and that will break Hawks' front line, back line, an entire team just in time for V3 to get their gold back and get back out on the map.
And now, despite all the work that Hawks have put into this early game, the gold is dead even. What a turnaround here for V3. A team that, again, struggling in the early game against the likes of the Hawks here, struggling to go toe for toe, struggling to keep up with the pressure of an Olaf, which we talked about is what you expected. But now, even in gold, and this is a team that we know can fight from behind, is even in gold and is now under a very clear expectation that I'd like to think pretty much anyone can work out, which is, hey, there is now never not giving up the Dragon.
Yep. They're just going to keep going. I mean, the only point that doesn't scale fantastically for V3 is that Orianna, eventually the damage will fall away, but we'll always be able to disrupt Zenit. We'll always be able to disrupt Dash's approaches. That will be the big question here. Ace will have to hold their nerve and make sure they provide that for their team, going for the Ludens themselves, so that extra layer of mage itemization. When you have 2, best not to overlap. Get the best of both worlds if you can. As the Hawks look forward for a little vision, both teams are very much aware of the Baron. move forwards. A bit odd not to chuck that blue buff onto Hollow, but maybe Ace will be assigned on their own and clear out a wave that will make the difference. The blue buff enabling you to throw more skills than you would, a little more quickly than you would, and just helps you stay off the minion wave a little longer against something, say, like that Silas.
Yeah, always welcome there. And I don't mind it on Ace because look at where Ace is going. He is on dash. And
This is the condition for it. You don't need to push mid as fast with the Ziggs if you're doing this as well.
Exactly. So Ace should be able to hold on. Unlike the last game where we saw these two meet up in the side waves, Ace isn't like 0-4. He's only 0-1. So more than capable of looking after themselves. But V3, better safe than sorry, right? They've got backup lurking.
This is an interesting adaptation. They know that Dasher likes to play real deep in these side lanes, so they presume some aggression there. They send more numbers than they need to, but they keep them in fog of war, so the Baron pressure is still unilateral across the map. And with that, without showing at all, Dasher was in a lot more danger than they could have ever realized. But 2 ships will pass in the night. Both teams will coalesce around this dragon instead. No one risking this Infernal Soul going over. Both teams contest division. V3 will have the river, but the Hawks will get the first reset. They will come back with another line of vision in time for this Infernal Dragon.
And I think what is really, really critical to mark with this Infernal, before we look at the fact that both of the bot lane players do have their 2 items, both mid laners, well, Datcher actually has 2 fully completed items, which is brilliant, and TPing in, is this dragon needs to be secured by Hawks in. This is the point, at 2 items, at 22 minutes, like we talked about 22 minutes ago, where Tussel's Olaf will start to collapse in on itself. Not because Tussel's playing poorly, but because that is Olaf on a competitive scene. It just starts to lose its effectiveness. So this is where Hawks need to secure this objective. Hawks have to win the follow-up team fight here. And the way you do that is do not group against Orianna.
Would be ideal. We're going to use some terminology from Melvin as on the desk. That Olaf is a meatball right now. And he might look to become a hot tamale, but otherwise he just provides his body for the team and provides access into V3's backline. He's got to make Hollow run away and not be as effective. As Unica comes forwards, V3 have burnt some cooldowns. Hawks may look on there, falling away of the pillar to push this forwards here. With the Scuttle Crab, V3 have a little more movement backwards and forwards and a little less time. The Hawks will struggle.
Like, V3 with the Ziggs can poke out the Hawks here until the Dragon is actually properly started. So this is fine for the likes of V2. Saying, okay, you want to wait this game out a little bit? That's absolutely fine. You guys are split up. So you have to play a strategy. Corporal going into the backline. The admin not getting onto Ace, so that is important. The shockwave not used just yet. Keep an eye on that one. Dragon is still aggroed as the Hawks fighting off the best they can, but they've managed to eliminate 1 member. That is Reyna going down. Zenit is close to the front line. They're trading, but access to the backline. Zenit forcing out of safety. Shockwave finds on multiple members again. Tussle doesn't really want to get too involved there. As Cog goes big. Apperman, though, isn't going to go down just yet. Cog is going to take down Apper. No, Apper uses the stopwatch by time, but he is simply doing that. As the Hawks lose the fight they couldn't afford to. Tussle, he hasn't even got smite. I don't think he can steal this.
It may be stealable. Hollow is running out of mana. Cog in the front line will take that one out before Tussle can get too close. Pretty key team fight victory there. Supports traded early on. Look for the cooldowns here. So Corporal goes nice and deep. Apperman isolates Cog, which should stop the dive presence, but Zenit not able to move through Reyna quick enough. So Reyna will eventually be taken down, but now Camille's ulti is gone. Corporal has paid with his life, and the flash forwards from Cog just allows the ball delivery system to work so perfectly. Stormbringer just separates that zone of safety, and even though Apperman will burn the stopwatch, not enough to keep him alive. 4 kills here over for V3, and the delay of that Elder. They'll find Tussle in the river here.
Oh, God, he might actually go down here. Yeah, he's just going to straight up die. We talked about this. That was the fight Hawks couldn't afford to lose. Because, oh, never mind. Ace is getting caught out of position. Ace will shockwave to buy time, but Ace will go down anyway. As the rest of V3 piling in over the wall. The Hawks, though, look like they're backing up. Zenit doesn't look like he wants to commit to the fight. They're looking at him. He's just dancing on the sideline here as Dash is like, well, where's my backup? The Hawks, they don't look like a team right now. In the last fight, Tussle committed to the Dragon, the rest of the team committed to the fight. Here, Tussle gets caught out, 2 members of the Hawks commit, 2 members of the Hawks back away. It looks like people that are not reading from the same playbook right now.
A little discoordinated for sure. Some members there thought they had the in, whereas Zenit never felt like he could approach. And with that fall down, that will be this Baron going over. No steal potential at all for the Hawks. They've moved away instead. This Camille to the bottom lane. One thing that will happen for this Camille eventually, normally around the 4-item mark, will be able to stand up to the Volibear just about in the side lane. And then play forwards from there, try and generate an advantage. But we are far, far away from that future in which the Hawks can deal with this. So Tussle is caught out position here. Reiner immediately pulls the trigger, no hesitation at all. Some damage comes through from Ziggs. The Solar Flare, not enough to delay Ace and Hollow from blasting onto that character. V3 uncharacteristically so far make a mistake. Ace completely out of position, and Hawks full commit. 3 members coming forwards. The Ziggs bomb doesn't do a lot, does just force Apperman out. Apperman at this stage is calling for outs. Corporal too low. Zenit here's the call for out. Not able to get in and do much. And unfortunately, Dasher left on his own and unable to survive without the team committing behind him.
Yeah,
Apperman is cosplaying Cog from last game here.
He's got a flank. We could get a nice positioning here because look where Dasher's moving in from as well. We could get a full pincer. Well,
pincer movements are incredibly hard in League of Legends.
Connect. They're going to go for the committal now. They have access to the backline for Apperman. Dasher is a little bit late to the arrival though, as Hawks lose 1 at the very start of the fight, but they are getting some. Zenit finally arriving, but it's just too little too late. The Hawks go for a multi-man flank, but there's no committal from the rest of it. They are too spread up. Instead of going in like a 5-man, they go marching like the ants, and much like the ants, they get taken out 1 by 1.
Complete evisceration here from V3. Pincer movements are ridiculously hard to do in League of Legends. You have to have a very specific setup or an incredible lead to make them worth your while. And with that, V3 are able to weather the storm. They are able to push forwards with those death timers coming through. Only Corporal is left. V3 moved to the inhibitor for a second, but they know better of it. The scars of last game, too bright in their minds. They will get onto the Nexus. They'll take down Corporal for a bit of extra mental damage, but this is V3's series in a clean 3-0. They take down the Softbank Hawks and move forwards into the second round.
And what a performance from a team that, especially from us here at the LJL, weren't really expecting much, right? Like, we looked at the V3 lineup and said, most of us, even before learning about the substitute jungle for Mugen, was like, look, not feeling great, not feeling confident. Most of us were leaning towards a Hawks victory. I know. And then
you definitely will. I had 3-1 for V3 before this.
I've been leaning towards them winning this thing since week 1. Like, don't think that's a surprise to anybody. But then we learned that Mugen wasn't playing, and a lot of people, especially you on the desk, you can hear me, were looking at this and saying, well, with Mugen gone, I'm not confident in V3 being able to take this. Hawks have got the full lineup, but Hawks today, they looked odd. They looked like they weren't reading from the same playbook. Play after play, you're seeing one member going in and then another member going in. I think the nerves of playoffs really got to them today. And, well, for V3, despite being a man down, they looked phenomenal. Like, 3 different styles of composition, 3 clean victories, 1 game where you were down for most of the game and you swung it back. Like, that's brilliant.
Yeah. Comfortable play from V3. They, even when the early game didn't go their way, just relaxed, leaned into it, and played it forwards. We're going to cut it to a quick break. I hope we've got an analyst desk segment lined up for you. And that'll be it from us, Midnight. It's been a pleasure. And hopefully we'll get to see V3 do even more miracles in the next round. We'll see you in just a few minutes.
Welcome back, everybody. Mars One here, Nightmare in the middle, Melvin is over on the other, and gentlemen, 3-0 series. Congratulations over to our victors of V3 Esports on a very well-deserved and convincing series overall. Like, this was dominant, and while we came in, we didn't expect this. We were truly expecting there to be a huge upgrade, honestly, for the side of the Hawks coming in, as V3 Esports had that substitute jungler of Unica coming in. That's not how it went, and Melvin is coming to you first. V3 Esports causing the big upset, and you thought this was going to be 3-0 before the upset came through. Apparently, the screw was truly there.
I was imagining that the Hawks would just come in on advantage. V3, they were on a slump. It didn't look good for them. Coming in with a sub on the day of, too, having Unica come in instead of Mugen, we just looked at this and thought, well, it's doomed. There's nothing they can do. But throughout the 3 games, V3's confidence grew and grew, and I'm starting to see what you two were telling me about of the V3 playoff stuff, because you could actively watch it from game to game get more and more, while the Hawks just faltered in front of it.
I'm just going to cut you off just before Melvin Nymera rather comes in, Melvin, because clearly you've not done your homework and not watched spring playoffs, where we've seen this buff play off more and more. But I'll let you off because you've done an incredible job every time. Nymera, we're a little bit melancholy here. I'm acting very uplifted and very hyped because while obviously as of the V3 fan of the LJL, that's not how I wanted this to go. Like, this isn't how we want any of this to go.
No, because we look at the Hawks and you look at what turned up today, that is not what we expected. And for good reason, the Hawks were really entertaining. They were a delight to watch throughout this split, and it is a bit of a heartfelt farewell from them in the 2021 season. But V3, they look confident. They look like they're on so much better even keel as a team, and that's with a substitute coming in. It looked like they understood what they needed to do to win. Cog was on form. Reiner was in sterling form as well. You know, it happened last year in summer. Reiner was our, our secondary MVP behind Boogie, the man, the myth, the legend. V3, I thought they might be able to pull it together if they survived the first round. They look like they thrived rather than survived.
Got V3 taking a leaf out of Team Liquid's book, pulling in the substitute jungler like Almino for Unica instead. And hey, it's working out. Team Liquid got that 3-1 over C9. This means DFM will have to pay Team Liquid instead of C9. We've already beaten Cloud9, so we don't have to do the perks factor. We've already done that one, ladies and gentlemen. Doesn't matter. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself here. V3 Esports won in convincing fashion, and I want to bring it over to you, Nymera, for the replay that I want you to run us through, because this team fight that you're going to be running us through, I've said is defining before in some of these other replays. This was kind of tussle. What were you doing, sir, in this one? I'm interested in how you're going to break this one down.
Okay, so let's go set the scene. Easiest one to look at. You look at this. You look at this. Dragon advantage in the early game for the Hawks. Why is that important? Well, even gold. So combat stats right now are literally only determined by those extra dragons coming across. Except, well, no, they aren't, because we've reached the mid game. We've reached 25 minutes, and prime suspect number 1 in this replay is this bloke over here, because V3 took away the one pick that's in the Hawks' wheelhouse and their champion pools that can actually enable an Olaf with shields, with speed ups. Dasher doesn't play enchanters, but he does play an Orianna, and V3 managed to pick that away because they chose to go for the Camille instead. We're going over towards this this dragon fight now, and you can see that the Hawks have already blown the solar flare. They don't have one way to get into the backline. Well, that's kind of what happened in game 2. We know how important that is. And Tussle looks at the minefield, looks at the dragon, and goes, oh, heck, I don't have a flank. I don't have an easy way into the backline. Apperman is looking for something, and this is where it all starts to fall apart, because Dasher is too far away. Yes, they have a flash. They do not want to use it right there. Zenit has to avoid this area of the map already, has to avoid this area of the map already because of the terrain put down. It's a really dangerous situation for Zenit, who can't now get towards the Ziggs, can't now get towards the Orianna. Literally, you're waiting on Apperman to try and find a way onto the Orianna, but it is not going to happen because Ace flashes away from the Zenith Blade. The Hawks don't have good distance to go into the fray, and we can see Tussle here, bless him, hasn't even been Trundle ulted yet, lost this amount of his HP, also can't really get towards the back line, and is looking at that dragon going, we can't secure the soul right now, this is too high HP. Reiner zones off the rest of the team, and V3 have an extra round of cooldowns to start playing around, whereas the Hawks do not have nearly enough damage to get towards the back line. Reiner sacrifices themselves for that disengaging play, but at the end of this still, look at the HP on these two members. Completely full. Completely full. Smiley face.
And what a beautiful smiley face it is. That was well done as always, Nightmare. Thank you for doing that for us.
My pleasure.
Melvin Izzle, Tussle in kind of no man's land, kind of doing a lot of that. The Hawks again and again throughout this whole series, miscommunication. They're not on the same page. What is going on with the Hawks in this series?
We looked at it initially and thought maybe it's a bad meta read. You look at it and go, okay, perhaps they're not prioritizing the Trundle, really not even acknowledging the Xin Zhao initially. Starts to develop through the series. You go, okay, they've started to find their feet a little bit, but not recognizing in the second game, neither draft does damage. It's all about Ezreal. It's all about Varus. But going for the lethality, there's just so many disjoints. Even in this game, like we saw there, you can't run a Kalista plus Olaf and not win the game before 15 minutes. They were at the Dragon Soul point, but if you do not play this correctly, as we saw from that point onwards, the game was over. And it has to come down to Hawks just coming in with a bad day. This is not their form that we have seen from them. This is not just a bad meta read. Everybody was not doing what they could. We saw times where Dasher could have ended the game with big shockwaves stolen on this Sylas, but they just weren't getting them. They were using them preemptively. And it has to be partly nerves, considering that Dasher and Zenit between them have barely any games. Corporal, only 9 games in playoffs. Between those 3 members, it's 29! There's individual members on the opposing team for V3 with more games than those 3 put together.
Yeah, but then the rest of the Hawks team has got a lot of very tenured players. I mean, you've got Tussle,
Apperman,
who's
at
been
least,
yeah, Apperman as well. Like, it's a very weird one where you've got that just not matching up with the amount of games, just not working. And we know that rookie buff is a real thing because coming into players on this opposite side of the series, and this is where I want to take it because hey, V3 Esports, you want to look at some rookies who haven't done many games? What about some players like Nemo, who won Player of our Series, came in without a single playoff game before? And I mean, looking over onto the other side, we haven't got a graphic prepared. We'll be going up on our Twitter sooner and later, so we want to announce this here. Drum roll, please. This is where we need to get, like, read. Unica was our player of the series, and what a performance! Like, I mean, Nightmare, I'm going to come to you for this. This was a player that we had tempered our expectations for.
For sure, because going back to 2020, it wasn't Middlecott on this broadcast who was the CGA fan. It was moi, it was me, it was I. I am Spartacus or CGA. Okay, I can't really think of a name with that one, but certainly I was a person who was really following that team, enjoyed the way that they played, thought they played with a lot of flair, even if it wasn't with a lot of calculation. And Unica came into that summer roster and was promptly blown out in playoffs by the likes of Steel. Had that one good series versus the Hawks, actually. 3-1 in that first round of summer 2020, but they ended up going out in quite dominant fashion from DFM, who'd made the lower bracket run to make it to the finals and second place finish in that split. And Unica was okay. stable, more stable than Yoshi was in spring, and because of course they struggled quite a lot as a jungler, but they were still a player that we wanted more from. We kind of saw that they probably weren't ready for the LJL's upper levels at that point.
Yeah.
But they looked at home here in this series. They looked confident. They looked like they were commanding areas of the map. They had a champion pool which was ready for this series in terms of the Trundle, the Diana, everything else. And I think that Unica coming in on such short notice into a team which has been so popular and so had so many eyes on it after that World's appearance, I think they've absolutely fit into that position well.
We'll have to see how that continues. Obviously, that was partly due to the fact of Muujin and Ace and the suspicion and concern of COVID around the team. But hey, coming in, getting player of the series and looking very strong. Exciting things to see from Unica. Even if we don't see them again, they are going to be in the LJL Academy team for V3 Esports. So we'll be seeing plenty more of them very soon on the Rift. So don't go anywhere, ladies and gentlemen. We will be seeing more Unica. To end this out, we need to kind of paint this picture. What V3 Esports are going to be going up against Axis, because it's not going to be our next match. That's going to be the Juggernaut match between Dead Nation, Focus Me, and Rascal Jester. We'll be going into a whole podcast episode around that one. I just want to bring it over to you first, Melvin Izzle, for Axis facing off against V3. I've already started to set it up. What are your expectations, kind of just holistically thinking about this matchup?
I think that you could very much argue that, considering we're expecting Muujin to be back by the time this matchup does happen, both of these teams relatively untested in the playoffs. Axis effectively walked over their series against CGA, also with roster woes for that team. Yes. Coming into this one, it wasn't exactly the same story, but you could argue that V3 kind of walked over this series. They were more coherent, they understood how their drafts needed to play out, and they set up Unica for success in every single game. Every single game, they gave them the best pick imaginable for them to do their job. They performed on it, so bringing Muujin back into the roster, provided that's what happens. Either way, frankly, against Axis, I imagine it's going to be a very close series, given the tiebreaker form and the history these two teams have in playoffs.
Nightmare.
I think the history thing is going to be an interesting thing to track, because remember, the only other time that Axis have been in playoffs, remember, this is an organization that famously went, 3-18 or something in the triple round robin, twice on the trot, 3 times on the trot.
2019 wasn't a great year.
This org has sucked in the past. They have been a firmly bottom tier team in the LJL for vast amounts of their history. Spring 2020, they make a miracle run after getting a 0-6 start, and are promptly shoved 0-3 out of the playoffs by V3, who went on to have a storming 2020, but now given a bit of chance for revenge in the same way that the Hawks were from last split. Remember, they lost to V3 in that very last split too. V3 are kind of like stacking up all of their old enemies in some ways and potentially having a DFM bout further into playoffs if they do succeed there too. It's kind of like, I don't know, like seeing some it feels like a trial in like Legend of Zelda or something, when you've got like the skeleton dude like teaching you how to do new stuff and bring up all these old bones. I'm like, okay, cool. V3 trying to make their own little protagonist story, but Axis have been those protagonists for us before in terms of our narratives, and they have the players to really contest V3. I think I'm favoring Axis still a little bit, but V3 on this form, it's close. It's really close.
It really is, and I mean, expectations have been well and truly dashed. We had thought that the Hawks could be one of the best teams in these bottom 4, with an 0-3 kind of walking out. This is a disappointing performance. Maybe we can see one of these other teams continue that perfect streak. I don't think we're going to see it between V3 and Axis. I think if we're going to see it anywhere, it might be in that Juggernaut match. But ladies and gentlemen, if you want my thoughts on that or anybody else's thoughts, ask your questions, jump into our Discord, ask us in the podcast questions, or hit us up on Twitter. Our ats are above our faces. Let us know if we're right or wrong about any of our opinions that we've had, except we're always right because, well, I said so.
Well, duh.
And I'm the host. It's like, yeah, of course, Nightmare, of course. Well, duh. Well, with that all said, ladies and gentlemen, we will be coming at you live with that Juggernaut match. If you are interested, give us a follow. Hit us up. We go live. We cover all of the games of the LJL only here on the LJL OU. But for myself, Mars1, for Nightmare, for Melvin Izzle, or otherwise known as Callum, for Midnight, for Temporal, and for our lovely producer, Reed and Initialize, wherever you are out there in the ether. Thank you everyone for watching, and we'll see you all very, very soon.